Okay, they gave me a speech to introduce Melissa Warren, and I'm disregarding it because I'm not the President of the United States. I'm going to do my own speech.
Don't make.
I am honored to introduce Melissa Warren, nurse practitioner and clinic coordinator at the Jefferson Weinberg ALS Center. Melissa, in my humble opinion, is a great nurse, both knowledgeable in the field of ALS, and most importantly, she's kind with the patients and their loved ones. Melissa is a team player at our ALS Center. She respects and works well with the other clinicians. I will read one little thing here. Her exceptional dedication and teamwork were recognized in 2023 when she received the Thomas Jefferson Advanced Practitioner Provider Teamwork Award. She's here to speak about the Healy platform trial.
Thank you, Gail. So I, as a teamwork winner, am here to present work of our team. I am the nurse practitioner in the center and was the chosen one to give this presentation to tell you all about our experience with expanded access programs at Jefferson. So just a little bit about the Jefferson ALS Center. We're a clinical and research integrated strategic program, which you can see in this model puts everything around ALS, around patients and their families, clinical care, education, clinical trials, support services, and research. Our clinic is very integrated. Our researchers are in our multidisciplinary clinic. Our administrative offices for the clinicians are right next to the basic science research labs. So even though we might all do completely different things and I might not really know what's happening on the basic science side, I get to see how hard they're working to figure out more about ALS. These are just a few people from our team that are involved in the clinic. Gail's down there. And I'm not going to go through naming everyone, but just to give you an idea of the amount of teamwork that happens to bring not only clinical care, but research to our patients with ALS. And then Dr. Ilieva, you can see, is up there. She's our clinical director, physician who would be giving this talk, but she was out of town. And then Dr. Passanelli at the top is the director of the center. And then our research director is Dr. Trotty. So first I was going to talk a little bit about clinical trials versus expanded access programs. And to make it easy, I just took the definitions from the FDA website. And if you go on there, there's a lot of really good information for patients, for clinicians, for physicians that are interested in enrolling their patients in expanded access programs. So clinical trials are research studies in which people volunteer to help find answers to specific health questions. These are carefully conducted, and they're the safest and fastest way to find new treatments and ways to improve health. Clinical trials are conducted according to a plan or the research protocol. And that determines the types of patients that can be enrolled in the study, what the schedule of the visits and tests are going to look like, what drugs are involved, what the dosages are, how long the study is going to find, and what the researchers hope to find. Expanded access programs, you might have heard the term like compassionate use, is a potential pathway for patients with a serious or immediately life-threatening disease or condition to gain access to investigational medical products. So it can be a drug, biologic, or medical device for treatment outside of clinical trials when there's no comparable, satisfactory alternative therapy options available. So this can apply to a disease like ALS, where we don't have a lot of good FDA-approved treatment options, as an option for treatment to put on top of the standard of care. So just a little side-by-side. This is very basic, but just to give you an idea of a clinical trial versus expanded access programs. So both programs do have inclusion and exclusion criteria, which are set by the sponsors for the trials. For clinical trials, usually they're looking to have individuals who are earlier in their disease, which is usually defined by the time of their disease onset and their pulmonary function. In an expanded access program, one of the biggest inclusion criteria is that they're no longer eligible for clinical trials. So the goal of an expanded access program is to give people who don't have access to clinical trials access to investigational medications. In a clinical trial, you have a double-blind period where someone is receiving the placebo. Double-blind means you don't know, we don't know, but we know someone is getting placebo somewhere along the way. In an expanded access program, you're guaranteed access to the investigational product. There's no placebo arm. In the past, expanded access programs didn't really collect data for research. Now that's starting to change with the Act for ALS, which I'll talk about in a little bit. In clinical trials, there's robust data collection on all sorts of things. So you're getting frequent visits, blood draws, different modalities, depending on what the trial is. Both of these have oversight by the IRB to make sure that it's safe and ethical for us to carry these out. So the Act for ALS, Accelerating Access to Critical Therapies for ALS, was signed into law by President Biden in December of 2021. If you've ever seen any bill get signed into law, especially something like this that had so much advocacy behind it from the community, usually there would be people living with ALS right around President Biden behind, but you could see they were on Zoom because we were still in COVID at the time. So what this bill did was provide funding to the NIH to provide grants for expanded access programs. What this did was really change the meaning of EAPs in the bill, and I don't know all the details of the bill. If you'd like to go read it, you certainly can. But there is encouragement to actually collect data, real-world data, that then can be used to learn more about these medications. And it provided the funding that was needed. Prior to this, there was really not a lot of good funding to centers to have expanded access trials. So at the time, if they provided that, they weren't getting reimbursed for the time of the investigator, the time of the coordinator, and just all the work and paperwork that goes into it. So it wasn't always a matter of not wanting to do it. It was not having the resources to do that. And again, as I talked about before, the expanded access programs would be for participants that are no longer eligible for clinical trials. So this is a picture of our clinical trial room, and then our new building at Jefferson, the Honickman Center, which is opening on Monday. So the picture on the right is our clinical trial room, and then you can see down the hallway, that's where the laboratories are, where basic research is being done. So you'll come in, and usually you'll see the coordinator, then myself or Dr. Ilieva. And then in the Honickman Center is where we'll have a multidisciplinary clinic. So now I'm going to go through a few of the expanded access programs that we participated in at Jefferson. Dr. Ilieva was really a big driver for wanting to bring this to our patient community. We heard loud and clear that people want access to medications, and most of our patients aren't eligible any longer for clinical trials, whether it's the length of disease or because of decreased respiratory function. So the first one that we participated in was AMX 0035. If it sounds familiar, it's because it eventually became FDA approved as Relivrio. All of the information for these clinical trials can be found on clinicaltrials.gov. It's a great place to go look too. Now they've updated their website. You can put in the disease, you can put in the investigational product, and they'll bring up any active studies that are using it and past studies. So our experience, we had no prior experience with this investigational product. We had been having our patients talking to them about the two parts of the medication, which were TUDCA, which is a supplement that you can buy over the counter, and sodium phenylbutyrate, which is a prescription. So we had patients that were taking both of those separately to kind of replicate what this drug was trying to do. It was a powder mixed in water, extremely poor taste, and I'm sure my fellow people with ALS in the room who had been taking it can attest to that. I did try it myself, but easy administration because it could be taken orally, it could be given through a feeding tube. We had in-person visits every 12 weeks. We tried to coordinate these with the multidisciplinary clinic visits to decrease the number of visits to the center, which are already taxing for people with ALS to make and their families, not only because of mobility issues, but we're located in Center City, Philadelphia. Most of the people that come to our clinic do not live in Center City, Philadelphia, so the traveling and just access to the building in itself could be a lot. We had 14 people screened for this program, 12 people enrolled. We actually had 2 people that we enrolled from out of the area. There was a lot of interest in getting into this program. One was from Ohio, one was from Texas. So they still had to make those every 12-week visits, and they had the means to, so they would come to Philadelphia every 12 weeks. The program ended when Relivrio was approved. I will say that the company was really, I felt, wonderful to our patients who were part of the expanded access program, and even as we battled through the insurance battles to get approval, they kept providing the product to our patients. The next expanded access program that we enrolled is CNM-AU8, or might be known as the GOLD solution. If it sounds familiar, it's because it was regimen C in the Healy trial. So we had some experience with this investigational product because we were a site for the Healy platform trial. As I said, it was regimen C. During that time, there were 2 doses, a 30 milligram or a 60 milligram. The EAP dose was at 30 milligrams after they got the results from the trial. It is a liquid solution, provides easy administration. I have not tried this one myself, but from what I hear from people, the taste is not really an issue. Same visit requirements, in-person visits every 12 weeks, which we would coordinate with our multidisciplinary clinic. We have 9 people total right now who are currently in this program. We enrolled 8 people at Jefferson. The sponsor had provided us with 6 slots. So you can imagine, like, when these are funded, they're not funded endlessly. So each kind of sponsoring program is run a little bit differently. So the way this one was run is Jefferson was giving 6 slots. And then we had 2 more people who were interested. So we reached out to the sponsor and were able to get them the investigational product as well. And then we had 1 person who transferred from another site. They had relocated from Florida, and instead of going to Florida every 12 weeks, now they'll come to Jefferson. And this is ongoing. More about our experience. There was potential pulmonary benefit. There was found in the Healy trial, delay to invasive ventilation. So that's why there's still a lot of interest around this medication. As part of that, kind of outside of the EAP, we paired with a pilot study that's being done at Jefferson by physical therapy researchers. And what they're trying to figure out is if there's early indicators to respiratory changes in C9orf72 carriers. So we had 3 people living with ALS, not C9orf ALS, but sporadic ALS, who enrolled in what they had a symptomatic ALS arm. And we enrolled them in that, and in 6 months, they're gonna re-enroll again to do respiratory measurements and next flexion strength. Kind of similar to what was talked about before, like it's not, it's quasi-experimental, I guess you could say, but to say like, we're giving people this medication, could we detect some sort of change in these minute respiratory measurements that the physical therapists are taking with different, more sensitive things than the like forced vital capacity that we're doing in clinic. Trehalose was also regimen E in the Healy platform trial, and also an expanded access program sponsored by CELOS. So we had experience with this investigational product in the Healy trial. The expanded access program started before we had any top-line results on the Trehalose trial, which means we didn't know. We didn't know what the results were from the Healy trial. This was the first EAP that was funded by that Act for ALS. So there was a lot of vigor in the community to get it up and running, to have people enrolled in it. I think there were about 70 slots nationwide available. They weren't limiting sites. It was kind of first come, first serve. So potentially Jefferson could enroll 70 people in it, I guess, if we got the first 70 slots. We did end up having 3 people enrolled. And the reason I think there was lower interest in this medication is because it was an IV infusion. It was once a week. People had to come to Jefferson for the first 4 doses to be monitored in the infusion suite with our nurses. And then they were able to get home infusions with remote monitoring with a nurse going out. So the infusion part for a lot of people is just a lot of extra steps for, you know, a pill or something they can drink in the morning. And then those 4 visits weekly to Center City, I think, was a deterrent as well. This program has ended, so there's no one any longer getting this. We have an upcoming expanded access program, which is enrolling now. It's just not up and running yet at our Jefferson site. We're anticipating by summer, which is predopidine, which was also part of the Healy platform trial. It was regimen D. We were able to have these EAPs through partnerships. So we're a member of NEALS through the Healy Center up in Mass General, and they were the ones that applied for the grant to get the funding for this expanded access program. Tech vs. ALS is an organization that is supported by Tech to raise funds to bring access to people with ALS. Its founder is a person living with ALS, and he had the means to travel anywhere in the country to get access to medications, and realized that there were a lot of people living with ALS that did not have that opportunity. He's from the Philadelphia area and went to Mass General and said, I want to provide some funds to, you know, start some programs in the Philadelphia area. So you can see a picture here is a picture of our ribbon cutting of the hallway in front of our clinical trial room, which is just a really exciting thing for us to be able to have the resources now to have these programs up and running for people living with ALS. So I have to give a plug. Dr. Ilieva is not here, but she is going to be giving a webinar with Sean Sarbucker, who's the founder of Tech vs. ALS, as part of the Healy Platform Trial weekly updates. They're now dedicating, I think it's the second Thursday of the month to expanded access programs. So they're going to be giving their talk on May 9th. I checked on the website. It's not up yet for you to register, but I did put the QR code here. You can scan the link to register or go on, you know, the Healy Center online. They're held every week, and they're open to questions from the community. That's who it's for. It's for people interested in the study, to keep everyone updated and to be able to answer questions. So I encourage you all, if you want to know more about expanded access programs, to go to those webinars. They're only half an hour, and I think they are recorded as well. And that's it. I thank you all for your attention. I'm sure I'll have some questions. I'll do my best to answer them. I am not a researcher, but I am a nurse, so you know I know a little bit of everything going on. Thank you so much. Yes.
So I read in the monthly newsletter that last month Deliverio was discontinued, taken
Yes.
off the market.
Yes.
Do you know anything about that?
I know that it was taken off the market
Okay.
after not meeting its primary endpoints in the phase 3 Phoenix trial.
It said something to the effect that they determined that it didn't work.
Yeah, so they did. So it was approved based on the phase 2 trial data, which was, I think, about 137 patients out of Mass General, on the condition that they would complete the phase 3 trial, which stopped enrollment upon approval in the US, and completed in Europe. That was, I think, 664 people. So once they analyzed that data, they didn't meet their primary endpoint. So there was no difference in people's ALS-FRSR slope taking Relyvrio. So that's where that came from, that information. I will say the one thing I've talked with people at our clinic about is they also did not find any safety signals. So they didn't find anything dangerous, which is, I think, a really important thing to keep in mind. And, I think hindsight's 20/20. We could all play Monday morning quarterback. It's, a real disappointment. I know for all of us, it was a somber day in our clinic that day to have one less tool in our tool belt for treatment of ALS. Christine?
Since TUDCO is part of that, have you heard anything else about the TUDCO portion of it?
I'm glad you asked that, Christine. Unfortunately, the TUDCO trial failed as well in Europe, yes. So what Christine's asking about, Europe was doing a trial with TUDCO, which is one of the parts of Relyvrio, just looking at that to see if it would affect the ALS-FRSR, and it did not. That came out like right after Relyvrio, yeah. So for a while, we have some people who were just taking TUDCA, and we said continue that for now. And we were hopeful that, like Stephanie and I were discussing, our dietitian, that maybe it's just the sodium phenylbutyrate that's like messing up something that's helping, but unfortunately, no.
But TUDCO still affects the mitochondria, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
It's not,
I actually cut down from 2,000.
whatever you're doing is working for you, Christine, so. Doug?
For a lot of these drugs, they talk about the efficacy in terms of like looking at the so the ALS-FRSR slope, but we were kind of talking about how that is so subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any like thought in terms of how they will in the future look at the efficacy of these with more objective measures, or do they just talk about the ALS-FRS because that's the thing that's out there, and they actually do measure it against more objective?
That's right. That's the validated tool that we have right now. So that's the primary endpoint of most of these studies. Two of the things I talked about, predopidine didn't meet those primary endpoints, but what they did see, they saw some change in signal in speech. Patients that were enrolled had a speech app where they had to record their voice, similar to some of the things they were talking about in the previous presentation, and they found some signal, as they call it, there that maybe it was helping. So that's why I think it's so great with this Act for ALS that they're going to be actually collecting some data now, because I was involved a lot with the Relyvrio AMX 0035, and it really wasn't, we weren't even doing ALS-FRS at the follow-up visits. It was just, you came in, like vital signs, an exam, and they got the drug. So we were doing it because we were interested, but it wasn't required. So now there's going to, I think, be a lot more. And then the CNM AU8, which is the gold solution, same thing. It didn't meet the primary endpoint, but they look at so many different things, like when you come for a clinical trial. So they do look at all of those things. And they saw a signal that it was delaying time to invasive ventilation. So, you see a signal somewhere, they're keep looking at it. So there are other things that they look at, but that's kind of like, yeah, what we have right now. Hopefully, they talked about biomarkers before, hopefully we'll have something better, because I have the same feelings about the ALS FSR as someone who administers it all the time.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Because Relyvrio was very explicitly connected to the ALS-FRS score, and it's now kind of failed in phase 3 trials and been pulled to the market. Do you think that has any, I guess from like a political standpoint, do you think that damages the the potential for new drugs? I mean, does the pharmaceutical industry, does the FDA look at that and say, well, that failed, so we're not going to, maybe it's too gloom and doom, we're going to pull back on what we let the industry do because this one failed, so let's be more careful with the other ones because they're all looking at this subjective rating scale.
Yeah, I think we definitely need more objective things. And Yeah, I'll talk to you later about my opinion on that, but it's, yeah.
Seems like most of these clinical trials and a lot of what they talked about in the other presentation is all about breathing. How's the respiratory? Whether or not you can get into the trials, all kinds of stem around your respiratory. Why is that such the only criteria that kicks people out of clinical trials?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not the only criteria, but
It seems to be a big one.
it's a big one. It's a big one. And the reason for that is in the clinical trial, they're looking to enroll participants that are earlier in the disease so they can more easily detect changes. Which is why I think these expanded access programs are so vital to give people access in the community.
I think it's, if we had a better grasp on going to specialists and then diagnosing it early enough, because it just seems like you go from one doctor, they don't know what's wrong. You go to
Yeah.
the next doctor, they don't know what's wrong. So each time you're sent to a specialist, you're waiting several weeks or months to get in. And then till you see the last guy, they go, well, maybe you need to see a neurologist. You might have ALS. What? And then by that time, if you have breathing problems, you don't fit in any of the criteria.
Yeah, I completely understand, and unfortunately, we hear those stories all the time. It's a very difficult disease to diagnose because we don't have one test, right, that tells us if someone has ALS. And I think as clinicians too, we want to rule out everything else because if there's something reversible, treatable going on, we want to make sure we figure that out. And it's tough, I think advocacy is a good way to do that, education, and like I know I was speaking, I won't say which one, but I was talking to a pharmaceutical company and they were doing some outreach with like internal medicine residents just to educate people more about ALS and what to look for. And that's why we always say sometimes in the talking to community physicians, there's this conception that you have to have like a really strong suspicion for a diagnosis of ALS to be seen in an ALS center. We'll take a self-referral. If someone calls us and says, I'm having like some weakness, I'm worried I have ALS, we'd rather for that reason, see people early and help figure out what's going on and hopefully say that's not what you have, but at least then you're seen by an ALS specialist. So sometimes the stop at other doctors does delay access to clinical trials, I agree. Yes.
Do you see more advertisement now that there's been more research, more outcomes, even beyond the pharma company because they have a drug and they're advertising to get people on their drug, but just to educate to the point of understanding the symptoms and some of the things to be aware of so that more people can be aware and they can help educate their physician, their primary care physician. I mean, is there more movement to increase just general advertisement when you get studies, outcomes, and partner with some of whether it's a pharma company or an advertisement company, just to increase the awareness?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and it's something we've talked about at our center, even just within the Jefferson system, and which is big. Right? There are physicians that didn't know that there was an ALS center at Jefferson. So yeah, I mean it's huge. I think some of it comes down to resources, right? We've talked about putting together kind of like lunch and learn, just like you said, going out to especially the community physicians. I think like in our center city, people know, but like you said, first you're going to your PCP first, and I've heard from people too that they get sent to like a neurologist, and then just letting people know our referral sources know, you can just refer straight to us. And we've had a couple of, primaries that probably had another patient with ALS at some point and referred them right to us. But I don't have a really good answer for you, except that I agree. And I think the more that we all, not just us, but you as patient, educate people, because, when our patients are hospitalized, I mean, that we go over there to educate the staff and even the, inpatient team. We're lucky enough that a lot of our clinicians also work in the hospital during the week, except for ALS clinic days. So, they'll get a call, or they'll call us that there's someone that they think might have ALS, and we'll go see them. So it's like getting the information out there, and then I think people will use it. The best way to do that, I am not sure, but.
It's like you see, like, Alzheimer's commercials and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I've long thought that there should be, and I think you don't see those commercials. I've never seen an ALS commercial, never. Like, I think Big Pharma could get together and maybe. Exactly, there's money out there, why not use the money to educate? Right.
I agree. Yeah. Christine, you could be in the commercial.
Why was the IV drug discontinued?
The company stopped the program once they got the top-line results from the Healy trial. So once they got the results that it wasn't effective, they stopped supplying the drug.
And do people, like, if they're on that drug, can they continue on it, or is it?
No,
No. Okay.
because these are still all investigational products, so they're not available from your pharmacy. We depend on the sponsors, the companies that make the drugs, to be able to supply it.
My husband was number 68 in that trial. He was
Congratulations.
chosen in that.
Yeah.
So the day he got his one IV dose, that night we got a call that it was stopped.
Oh.
That there was no efficacy from the trial that they had prior to the group he was in. There was a group in the year before, and the data was supposed to be compiled by December, and he was enrolled in January, but the data never came through until March. So they had 3 months to compile everything, and they said the people that had placebo versus the people that had the drug, there was no difference in either patient. They couldn't tell that people with ALS was getting any better.
Yeah, so the Trehalose was part of the Healy platform trial, so that was regimen E. So that's, when that data came out, that's when they stopped the expanded access program.
Cold turkey that day.
Yeah.
With the gold, the Celine, that trial,
Yeah.
is the goal of that to get FDA approval?
I don't know that there's any plan yet to get FDA approval. I think there might be a plan to do a phase 3 trial and then continue the EAP and then get some more data and bring that back to the FDA. I think I'm not a drug developer, but I would think that your goal, if you have a product that's efficacious, would be to get FDA approval. But I don't think they're quite there yet. They're definitely moving things along with the research. Janie, did you have a question? Okay.
We have a question in the back here. Leah.
Hi, I was on Healy platform D for Georgetown, and I think the open label, I'm still on it. It lasts for like 2 years and it's ending the end of May when they decide to do a phase 3 trial. I had no data collected almost the entire open label.
On the open label,
Yeah, to me that's such a missed opportunity.
definitely.
Do you think the NIH funding now of EAPs will change that?
For the EAPs, I believe it's required now for them to collect I'm not sure which data and who decides what data. I don't know if the FDA decides that, but that was one of the stipulations in the bill, that there will be real-world data collected. I will say for the CNM AU8, which was the gold solution, they're collecting a lot like respiratory data, since that was where the signal was. Patients are getting an SVC when they come in, some blood work. So yes, I do think that it's a missed opportunity, and hopefully in the future, I think they're seeing value. And I don't know, I'm totally looking into this, but maybe out of like Qalsadi, Tofersen, where they kind of looked at that data further out and then saw a signal that we're kind of missing opportunities. We have people with ALS taking these drugs who want to participate in research and find out, is this helping? So I hope so. Yeah.
Is Radicava still in its trial phase? Is there a possibility Radicava could be taken away?
Radicava is FDA-approved medication. Yeah. There was recently a trial to look at daily dosing of Radicava versus the cycle that you take, because it used to be an infusion, and then they based the oral consumption based on how you were taking it for that, and then people are like, well, what if I take it every day? What they found is it wasn't any more efficacious to take it every day, so there wasn't any data to support that, so then it just stayed the same. But that's the Radicava is FDA approved.
But the Relivio was too.
It was.
No danger that they'll pull the FDA approval from the Radicava.
I don't think so.
The Radicava had a phase 3 successful trial,
Okay, that's
correct?
the answer.
And it's been on the market since 2017.
The Relivrio, I think they just based it on a phase 2.
It was a phase 2 trial, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In an effort to make it available. I think the intent was good. We need some middle ground, maybe, make it less expensive.